I am forced to perform. I still believe there's a real me somewhere far underneath this act I'm putting on. So if I show who I am, what if they hate what I can never change? And so one more time, I step back onto the stage. I wish I could stop it, but the show must go on. It's time to begin the act.
My name is Deborah Miller, and this is my story. I grew up in a family that most people would consider religious, with parents of two different faiths. Every week we attended 2 churches. It was really more of going and sitting there, but not taking to heart anything that I was hearing. As I grew, so did the tension between my parents. My mom was a very godly woman, and my father was a religious man, but for many years his heart was far away from God. My father would take away our Bibles in anger or forbid us to go to the other church. And so it was my mom that shared with me how God had sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for my sins. He was the sacrifice that was needed to cover all the sin in my life. I accepted Christ and the sacrifice he gave for me, and he became my Savior. Now I'd like to say at that point, everything was beautiful, that I became the perfect child and perfect teenager and grew into the perfect adult. But real life is messy. And as I grew, I started to make choices that I knew I shouldn't, but I often chalked it up to not having the proper teaching or basically blaming it on something else besides just me. But then, very suddenly, my father passed away. It was a marker in the lives of my family, because at that point, after that point, everything changed. I can see how God took a very difficult situation, but at the same time, used it in the lives of my sisters and my mom. Shortly before my father passed away, he did come to a knowledge of who Jesus Christ was. And so I can see how God used that knowledge of his decision even to help temper some of the grief we felt in the midst of his loss. I saw for the first time, I think, the love and compassion that are a part of the family of God. My mom sat each of us down and gave us the freedom to consider what we believed and why. I began to see that I couldn't blame the wrong things I was doing on lack of opportunities or teaching, but that I was actually responsible for the choices I was making. God used all of that to grow me up in him and truly begin to transform my life. And it has become probably a lifelong pattern for me to be studying his word, to be learning more about him, to be growing in my relationship with him. And that has changed everything. I am not yet perfected, and yet he is at work in me and through me, growing me up in understanding who he is and how good he is. None of the difficulties of my childhood have been wasted, because he's able to use all of it and make it a part of his story in my life.